I'm your producer, Todd Bartu, and this is Offshore Explorer. Offshore Explorer looks at the world from the sailor's point of view, port by port. Together, we share stories that detail the important intersections between sailing, culture, and life, past, present, and future. Coming up on today's episode, a holiday in Marbella turns into a run-in with the cops and one of the world's most notorious gun runners. But first, let me introduce our host, a lifelong sailor who has traveled the world, raced international 14s, and crossed the Atlantic countless times. A published author who has written for both stage and screen, Mr. Scott Dodgson.
Hey Todd, how are you today?
I'm doing great. So, what is today's episode about?
Yeah, today's episode is about being arrested in Marbella and Marbella, Spain, which is a really, really beautiful place and it's a super fun place to be. It's got tons of golf courses, great sailing, mountains are close by, tremendous food. But when you cruise and you sail, it's important to get out of your boat and to shake that whole cruising persona you have. I kind of look at it's like get out of your monastery and get out there and see the world and experience the world. And this is a story about me accidentally coming across and meeting and becoming a friend of one of the world's most notorious weapons merchants.
Great. Take it away, Scott.
On December 29th, 1999, some of you will remember that there was a big to-do about what was going to happen when all the computers would slip over from the 1990s into the new millennia of 2000. It was a big deal. A lot of talk, a lot of worry. IT professionals were probably making more money than they could handle. Everybody thought their clocks were going to stop. Time would stop. The whole world would crash and burn on this sort of new internet step, so to speak. And we were worried a little bit and concerned that some of our navigation and GPS systems, etc., on the boat would stop working for some reason. So there was this air of uncertainty. But also there was an air of this was the new millennia, 2000. I picked up a Ferretti 90 in Barcelona, or Barcelona, as they say. The owner of the boat, a Finnish fellow, and his wife, both very crazy, both with more money than you could shake a stick at. I ended up building a couple of boats for him and a variety of other things and had a weird time with the dude. But in any case, this was my first sort of job for him. So we were going to take this Ferretti 90 from Barcelona, and we're going to take it down to Marbella. Now, Marbella, Spain, is in the Costa del Sol. It's an absolutely beautiful place. It's got great beaches. The mountains are very close. It is known as sort of the Spanish version of Monaco. Lots and lots and lots of rich people, especially rich people who are, quote-unquote, somewhat criminal people from Andorra. So on the 29th, we arrived with the boat and put it into the slip in the marina. It's a beautiful little marina. If you come across the ocean, Atlantic Ocean, come through the Straits of Gibraltar, and after you come out of Gibraltar, just, hang left, go port, and go up the coast. And Marbella is, sailboat-wise, is just a couple hours north of that. And it's just a lovely place to sort of stop, take a breath, before you go into the Mediterranean full bore. The place was established in the Phoenician times and Roman times and all sorts of times. It's always been there, and it's considered very wealthy. There's some lovely architecture. Antonio Banderas lives there. Sean Connery used to live there. There's a lot of, celebrity sightings in Marbella. So I had to boat, and we're all tied up and ready to go. And the Finnish owner flew down with his family. And we decided to go out. In fact, we took the boat out, went down to Gibraltar because they had never seen Gibraltar, and they thought it was sort of interesting. And Gibraltar is interesting. I mean, it's very English, cannons, redcoats. It is a place that there's all this kind of quasi-tax criminality, I might say. This is where you hide your money, offshore investments into weird shit. And, it's just got this really wonderful, as I say, wonderful seediness about it. And Marbella is a little bit like that, except, Marbella is filled with people, with very wealthy people, lots of money. I mean, really ridiculous amounts of money. Which, if you're just a regular guy like me, coming from the United States and running boats in the Mediterranean as a captain and being paid, decent money, but not great money, and I was not rich at all. These people are sort of like the lower class of rich people, or the no class of rich people. And when you see them in their little arrogant, we just made all our millions last week kind of attitudes, and you should do everything because this money makes me a better human being than you. When you see people like this, they're worth laughing at, to be quite honest. And that's kind of the atmosphere. And it was, the holiday was coming up. Everybody was worried about computers failing and all the rest of that kind of stuff. So it was a kind of an interesting atmosphere at the time. So we went down to Gibraltar with the boat and took the family down there. We came back the same day. It's a quick ride. The weather was horrible. It was very cold. I mean, this is December. It's cold in the south of Spain at this time. I mean, it's not snowing. It can, but it's not. It's not summertime. And so we went through the whole process. Now, on the 30th, the next day after our little trip, I should say the 31st, after our little trip down to Gibraltar and back, I was summoned to the port captain's office, which is very unusual, but, I went anyway. And the port captain barely could speak English. We had to find somebody that could speak English and Spanish. So I was standing in the port captain's office, and he was telling me, in essence, that I had some stolen property on the boat. I had no clue what he was talking about. And I said, okay, do you guys want to come and tell me what it is? Should we look at it? And they said, it's a scooter. It's stolen. It's been reported stolen. And I said, no, I don't think so. I said, it may be reported stolen, but in fact, it belongs to the owner of the boat. And then they asked, do I have papers? And I said, well, I don't have them on me. You just can't ask me to come blind, but yeah. So I went back to the boat with a policeman in tow. Went on the boat, and I spoke to the owner about this scooter that was sitting on the upper deck of the vessel. And I said, do we have the papers for this scooter? And I said, because somebody has reported it stolen. And he looked at me, and I could see in his eyes that there was some sort of conflict that was not resolved. and that I was going to take the brunt of it. In essence, what had happened is the previous captain had gone and bought a scooter for the owner. The owner just sent him money, bought the scooter, but he bought it and he kept the scooter in his name. He licensed it in Spain in his name. And the owner, just because he had paid for it, he sent the money and everything else like that. There was some sort of, contention, and the previous captain was very distraught and angry at the owner for, perceived not paying wages and all the rest. And if you're a new captain and, the old guy is complaining about wages and, being ripped off by the owner, it kind of sends up some red flags, and it makes your presence very uncomfortable. But anyway, the owner just said, well, we'll take care of it. I've got some papers and I'll get it all sorted out and this, that, and other thing. And I said, okay. And then I went back to the port office with the policeman in tow. I explained that we'll have the papers and all the rest of the stuff, but we can't get those until after the first of the year because they will be in the law office and the lawyers are off for the holidays. So the port captain says, okay, but you can't leave. You're going to have to stay here. I said, well, we intend on actually technically leaving the boat here because we were going to sell the boat and we're going to sell it in a brokerage in Marbella. And then the family would fly home. I would take all the belongings that were on the boat and personal items, throw them into a van, and drive back to France, where we were based in Antibes. And that was the plan. So we were going to spend the New Year's in Marbella. So moving forward, we ended up having a kind of awkward day on the 31st. There was a party on the boat for New Year's. My mate and I worked the party. We served drinks. We made food. Other people came to the boat that were friends of the owner. Everybody seemed to have a really, really great time. And, everything ticked over to the first. But one incident happened just prior, and that was on the 31st. I went shopping with the lady of the family, and she asked me to come with her, and she went, and she was in she went to a jewelry store in the old part of Marbella, which is just, lovely little streets, very chic shops. Everything's very expensive. And she went in to this shop, and she asked me as sort of like a bodyguard, so to speak. And even though I'm not a bodyguard, but, needless to say, I was there as a sort of show of force, so to speak. So she was in this shop, shopping for some jewelry. Her husband didn't want to go. He just stayed back on the boat, and he was a little bit of a flake. So I'm outside. I didn't go in. I'm just kind of leaning up against the wall and watching her inside and trying to pretend that I was a bodyguard. When this Syrian man came walking up and looked in the window, and he looked over at me, and trailing behind him were two bodyguards. I mean, real bodyguards. They were big guys carrying guns, easily recognizable. And I could tell that this Syrian guy was pretty, he was a heavyweight in terms of protection and stuff like that. And I'm just leaning up against the thing. I was dressed in, khaki pants and a white polo shirt with, just and a hat and sunglasses and my normal big ass fancy Rolex watch, and I was just leaning up against the wall, really not making eye contact or paying attention to him, or even none of that. Just like, okay, here's another guy. Da, 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 da. I might mention that I knew he was Syrian because the summer before, I had actually sailed on my own boat all the way around the coast of Turkey into Ankara, and then from Ankara, I got a visa to sail into Syria. I went from Syria into Israel, and then from Israel to Cyprus, and Cyprus back up into Greece, to Rhodes, Greece, where I was based. So there was a good I kind of got a good understanding of, who is where and what, and who might be whom, and where they might come from, and this, that, and other thing. And he also, the other giveaway was he had a lapel pin with a Syrian flag on it. And I would have never in a million years recognized it, except when you are in a place like Syria, everybody has a flag. Everybody's flying a Syrian flag. Everybody. It's everywhere. It's kind of crazy. It's like in Turkey. Turkish flags are everywhere. There's a big Turkish flag in front of a donut shop. There's a big the market. Everywhere there'd be Turkish flags. Any case, so I recognized that, and that sort of gave me a clue that this guy was a Syrian guy. He's very casual, but expensive clothes, well dressed. And then the lady of the family, she called me into the shop. She gave me a wave, and I went into the shop, and she asked me what I thought about this and thought about that, and she was showing me these necklaces, and they were very gaudy and very bad taste and incredibly expensive. And he came in the shop right after I went in, and his wife followed. I hadn't seen her, but she was in another shop, and the bodyguards were sort of watching both of them. And his wife came in, and so they were standing next to us, looking at this jewelry. I wasn't there to buy shit. I couldn't afford anything in this jewelry store, and I couldn't buy a glass of water there. And so they're talking, and then I say to the lady that, okay, I'll wait outside. I said, this is nice, whatever. She says, okay, let me think about this. And I said, okay, I'll wait outside. So, because the shop was pretty small, and I was getting a little claustrophobic in there. So I went outside, and then the Syrian man left his wife in there. And at the time I smoked, so I lit up a cigarette, and I was smoking a cigarette, and he lit up a cigarette and smoking a cigarette. And this is the one thing that I honestly do miss about smoking cigarettes is the camaraderie and the ability to meet people you would never even talk to if you didn't smoke. Smokers have this whole okay, hey, how you doing? I'm smoking a cigarette. You're smoking a cigarette. So, you strike up a good conversation where normally you wouldn't strike up a conversation with that person at all. So we just started chattering about, I said, oh yeah, she's just that. Another thing, we got a boat Friday night. He said, oh, really? He said, I've been thinking about buying a boat. And I said, well, the boat's for sale. After the family leaves, you're welcome to come down and take a look at the boat. And, it's at the brokerage, and, it's being listed there, and all the rest of this kind of stuff. Really? And you're the captain? Yeah, I'm the captain. Oh, wow, really? You're an American? Oh, yeah. Da, da, da. So we had this conversation. It's just this sort of casual conversation. The bodyguards were sort of looking at me with, evil eyes. So anyway, the lady of the boat comes out. She's got a little bag and everything else like that. So we walk back to the boat, and they get on the boat, and she thanks me very much for, just being security, etc. And I said, yeah, no worries, just part of the job. And and the Syrian general, it was just a passing conversation. So we have the whole party, the New Year's Eve. The millennial thing did not happen. Nobody's computers freaked out, broke. GPS continued to work. And, the watch just turned over from 1999 to 2000 with really kind of a petering out effect. So everybody was pretty happy about that. And we had a nice party on the boat. I was a little bit nervous about the whole boat papers thing. So on the 3rd, I got summoned, January 3rd of 2000, I got summoned to the port captain's office. And they asked me about the papers. They said, okay, this is time. Da-da-da, da-da-da-da. I said, okay. I said, I haven't gotten the papers yet, but we're not going anywhere. And I kind of treated it as a kind of, like, this is like a non-incident in my world. And first of all, I'm just the yacht captain. I'm not the owner. And the scooter happens to be on the boat I'm running, but the scooter is legitimately paid for by the owner, and the owner will attest to that. His lawyers will attest to that. We just haven't gotten around to doing it. And we're going to get the papers from the other guy, too, because he's obligated to do that from the former captain. So I'm sitting on this kind of stool. It's the best way I could describe it is a wooden stool. And I'm sitting on it. It's a little bit lower than, like a chair, or just slightly lower. So you feel kind of like diminished. And the poor captain says to me, this is on the 3rd. And that morning on the 3rd, the entire family had left. So I was by myself on the boat. And the owner of the boat had promised me that he would have everything taken care of by the end of the day. He says, as soon as I get back, he says, I'll have the lawyers, I'll have all the papers sent. We had the fax number for the port office. We had everything was all set up. So that it was an easy thing. We explained it to the port captain. We explained it to the policeman that was there. We went through the whole process and said, yep, all the papers will be here this evening. The owner's flying home to Finland to get the papers. Everything was going to be done. Nothing to worry about. There is no stolen property on the boat. And I'm sitting on this little stool, and then after I give this whole explanation, I know that the owner is in the air, so I can't call him to help me out in any way. And he says, they pick me up, and they put handcuffs on me. And they say, okay, come on, you're going to jail. And I was like, no, no. All the papers are fine. This is, we're fine. We're good. There's no crime being committed here. Okay. And I don't know how many people know this, but if you're ever arrested or detained as a U.S. citizen abroad, the first thing you do is to call your closest U.S. embassy or consulate. This is really key. And they're the only ones that are going to help you out. Now, what they can do is they'll provide a list for you for, local attorneys that speak English. They'll contact your friends, your family, if you want. They can provide all the materials that you need for the court case. They'll translate the Spanish, for example, Spanish into English for you. They'll make sure that you're getting appropriate care. They're your advocate in general. Okay, they'll let you know what's going on and how this process is going on. So as I was arrested, okay, and I have a legit passport, I'm okay, everything is okay. As I'm arrested, I say I want to call the embassy, the consulate, and in the Spanish would okay, yeah, no worries. When we get to the police station, you could do that. So they put me in this little car. I don't remember what kind it was, but it was small. And my thoughts were, in America we have big police cars. We like big police cars with big engines in them stuff. I think it was a Fiat I was in. It was like his little Fiat. It's like, this is the police car. It's got the little light on the top. It seems quaint, but you know what? That's fine. That's just the way they roll. But I should say, in addition to calling the consulate or embassy, is they can't get you out of jail. They won't go to court with you. Um, they can't provide like legal advice. They're not lawyers. They're not going to represent you in the court. They're not going to actually serve as official interpreters or translators for you. And they won't pay any kind of legal fees, medical fees, or anything that you accrue when you're in this jail. So just know that you've got to, they're there as an advisory, and they will do some things, but it's kind of disappointing to a certain degree. So I go to the police station, and they sit me on a bench, and they take my handcuffs off, and which surprised me because usually in America, you always see the movies and shows where they handcuff you and then they take your handcuff and they handcuff you to a bar and, you're cuffed all the time. But here it was very casual, and they just sat down, and I was sitting on a long bench. And I'm sitting there for a long time. And I said, I want to call the consulate. I want to do this. I want to do that. And they're like, okay, yeah, we don't understand. No hablo inglés. So off they went. And I'm just sitting by myself on this bench. A few hours later, after being given some water and I think I had a cup of coffee, in walks this Syrian guy that I had met at the jewelry store with his wife. And he goes to the desk, and he's talking to the Spanish police officers like he knows them, like they're old friends, and they're getting something for him. And he's at the table, and I'm behind him, and he's talking to these guys, and they're all running around, getting his stuff, and it's like he's like a big deal and all the rest of this kind of stuff. And I'm sitting there, no handcuffs, but I'm sitting on the bench, and he turns around and he sees me. Hey, how are you? And I said, well, I'm not so well, I'm in the police station. So we started to have this kind of little conversation. He says, is there anything I can do to help you? He says, I know these people, I can help you. And I said, there's some paperwork that has to come. I'm waiting for the owner to land in Helsinki and to get home and to get the paperwork and then have the paperwork faxed to the Port Authority. But basically they're saying I have stolen goods on the boat. I have a scooter, and I'm telling him the whole story. And he's standing there. He's very interested in what I'm saying, and he's nodding his head and this, that, and other thing. And then he just sort of sidles up to me, and he sits down and right next to me. And he says, a lot of times right and wrong are too close to call. And I agreed with him. Yeah, I said, I think at times it is too close to call. We live in a fairly black and white world. Us and them and us. But you're right. Sometimes in this international world of sailing around, and there's right and there's wrong. And sometimes even being right is wrong. So we began to have this sort of interesting, sort of philosophical question. And while we were doing this, he was very interested in this, and it seemed to me that he didn't get to talk to people like myself very often. Because in fact, this person that I was talking to, he introduced himself as Kassar, was Al Kassar. He's a very, very famous and in jail today merchant of death. Al Kassar was a sold arms, millions of dollars worth of arms to Croatia and Bosnia and Somalia. He's violated every United Nations arms embargo. There was a question with his passport, which is why he was there. He was getting an quote-unquote passport from Argentina, which people were having some problems with, and he was having some problems with, and he had to actually come down to the police station to have his picture taken to be put in the Argentinian passport, which actually turned out to be false passport. He applied for it under false pretenses, and this was sort of a nagging problem, as he said. It's just a nagging problem. He says it happens. It's just a nagging problem. Well, in 1982, he was also arrested for his involvement in the Achille Lauro hijacking, which is a very famous, ship hijacking. And he provided illegal weapons in the vehicles, and he actually had spent a year in jail before he was released on bail. And he was found not guilty of these charges. But he's a pretty well-known guy in the criminal world, in the, let's say, the arms business. But he was also incredibly rich. A lot has been written about his character. There's been movies about his character. There's a lot of things of this nature about him. He's been in magazines and Paris Match, and all the New Yorkers always talked about it. I mean, he had something to do with the Contras and Oliver North, and this is a whole period of conspiracy and weapons and all this sort of international intrigue and stuff like that. But he was really a nice guy. He was a business guy. There wasn't any sort of thing that I would look at him and say, oh, you seem like a nefarious human being. You seem like an evil human being. This is a guy just out making money. And money was his thing. Money, money, money. That's all he thought about, was how to make money. But he enjoyed the flamboyance of the money. He enjoyed the whole live today like there's no tomorrow kind of concept. So here we are sitting on this wooden bench in a police station. He's waiting to go get his picture taken for his false passport. And I'm waiting to get papers faxed to the police station so that I can get out of this whole stolen property situation. And it was like, here's a criminal and a quasi-criminal, and we're sitting there talking. And I always ask myself, what did we talk about? We talked about, things, how the governments have two rules. There's, what the government publicly says, and this sort of bravado of the government is always right. And then there's this other thing, how the world really works. These arms are sold because the government somewhat sanctioned them. Things move around the world that are sanctioned and not sanctioned, and money goes into this Swiss account. It comes out of that Swiss account. And even in today's thing, I mean, the whole Trump thing with all his money and the nonsense and the Russian nonsense and all the rest of this stuff has always existed. It's never stopped existing, and it will continue to exist no matter what laws and rules are put into place, because the governments are the ones who don't want to abide by the rules. Because if they want to do something that's against the rules, they'll do it. They'll find somebody to do it for them. Okay? And if that opportunity comes to you, where you can make millions of dollars for, say, transferring cargo from Poland to Croatia, yeah, why not? Do it. You make millions. Walk away from it, but you can't. That's the problem. And that's sort of what I was talking to about with Alcaceres, how money and boats and yachts and all the rest of this stuff, it's so addictive. And that you almost, in a sense, kind of lose your mind. And we were just sitting there, just having this real philosophical chat. And he was explaining to me the ins and outs and the frustrations and of doing business internationally and And he was sort of moving up to the point where he was kind of recruiting me to a certain degree, like saying, well, your boat, you can move back and you can go here and there. How much weight would a boat like that carry? You know, he's asking a lot of very pertinent questions that your average boat shopper, yacht shopper, would not ask. And I explained to him, you know, that we were fairly free to move back and forth between countries. We did have to check in. Very rarely would customs or any authorities ever come on the boat. And if they did, they never inspected the boat. They would sit, you know, in the aft cabin, and we would just, in the salon, and we'd have a conversation, and they'd be served drinks, and we'd stamp papers, and they would leave. And that was my extent. And the extent of me knowing that was close to 20 years at that point. He got up and he went into another office. They took his picture. He came out and he said to me, he said, look, I just asked these guys if they could let you go. And I said that you're a good guy and you're not going to go anywhere. And I really wanted to come and see your boat. I told him that was your boat. And he was like confusing that aspect of it. And I said, oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. He says, so you can go. And he said, well, I'm having a party. And I think this was the 6th. He said, I'm having a party at my house. Why don't you come? I think you'll like it. There's lots of interesting people and some celebrities and stuff like that. And we have some great food. So, you know, come on up. I said, oh, okay. Well, where is it? And he says, well, gave me the name. It's Palacio di Mifaldi, which is the Palace of My Virtue. And he had been given the nickname by reporters as the Prince of Marbella, which was very interesting and fun. So I thought, this is cool. So he leaves, goes outside where his bodyguards were working, and he climbs into a brand new Rolls Royce, and he drives away. The police officer comes over to me. He says, yes, everything is okay. Senor Alcazar has said that you're a good guy and you're not going anywhere. We know where your boat is. And he said, when you do get the papers in, you please bring them to us and everything will be okay. I said, well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And then they asked me if I wanted to call the embassy. And I said, no, I'm good without the embassy. Thank you. And I left. I actually literally I had to take a taxi back because the police station is a little far from the marina. So I took a taxi back to the marina. I got on the boat, and my maid at the time, Florence, was sort of bopping around and, you know, cleaning up and this, that, and other thing. And second I got back there, I look up, and the scooter is gone. And I said, how did the scooter disappear? And she said, the police came and they took it. And it was the broker had actually helped them. So the scooter is actually in the broker's office. I said, okay. So anyway, I went to the broker's office. I'm just like sweating bullets at this point. I'm just like so tired of all this nonsense. I go in, he explains to me that the poor captain had asked him to hold the scooter until, you know, all the papers were done. And I assured him, this is the boat broker speaking. He said they assured him that the scooter did belong to the boat and everything is copacetic, and I'm sorry they had to arrest you and all the rest. I hope everything is all right. And I said, yeah. I met a really nice guy named Alcazar. And he looked at him, his face just dropped. You met Alcazar? Really? I said, yeah, he's invited me up to his house. Do you know where it is? Oh, he said, just give him the name. Every taxi cab driver knows exactly where it is. You're so lucky. You're so lucky to go up there. I would love to go up there. I said, well, he invited me. I don't know if it's a +1 or whatever the case may be, but, you know, I'm going. He says, no. You have to be very careful with these people Be very careful. I said, well, he is interested in looking at the boat. And then his, of course, boat broker eyes. Somebody interested in a boat I'm selling. So he was very excited about that. So I finally went back. I sort of got the boat sorted out. I get everything going, and I spent some time, in a cafe right across in the marina. There's a little road that goes in front of the marina, and there's restaurants all the way along the front, and people will drive their fancy cars. Like, don't even think if you got the best Mercedes AMG in the world and you drive down this street, you'll be booed. It's not good enough. It has to be something exotic. All right. It has to be over the top Ferraris and over the top Lamborghinis and all the, one of a kind McLarens. They cost $400,000 or $500,000 or whatever the case may be. And anyway, that's what this road is. And people just drive around in circles to be seen. And the people in the cafes kind of look up and they see the car. And if they like the car, they clap. If they don't like the car, they go back to their drink and their conversation. And it's a very sort of Marbella kind of experience. So the time came around that it was time to go to this party. And I will say that I actually received an invitation on the boat. A young man, probably 20s or so, came down and asked me who I was, and this and the thing, gave it. And they had my name. They knew who I was. They knew where the boat slip was and all the rest. And this is information I did not give them. This is information that they found on themselves. I just thought I'd just hop in a cab and go up to this guy's house, which I found out was a palatial mansion with all sorts of grounds. It was absolutely magnificent. And, I would just go up there and wander around, have a drink, talk to a couple of people, and then come home and just be nice, right? But no, they had my name. They knew who I was. There was security checks done. They knew where the boat was, all the rest of the stuff. The young man asked me if he could take some pictures of the boat. He came in the boat and they took pictures all the way around. It was like kind of cool, but freaky in a way. And he says, well, I have to get these developed because, back then we didn't have iPhones. So that went on. I knew I had to be there at, I was invited to show up around 9 o'clock, which is actually quite early for Spain. Usually it's somewhere around 11, 12 o'clock that you show up. But I was asked to come at 9. I said, okay. And so I got in a cab when the 5th or 6th, I forget which day it was. And I drove up into this area of very, very wealthy homes and really beautiful. And I will say, I have run and been on some of the best and most expensive yachts in the world. And I have been around people that are worth billions of dollars. I never paid them much attention, never gave them any kind of special treatment. I've always been, like the owner of this boat in Finland, he was mega rich, not a billionaire, but on his way to becoming one. And his products, I can say, touches almost everybody in some way. And so I'm kind of used to that. And I grew up, I went to a private school. I was with wealthy people all the time, even though I wasn't wealthy. But it always called to mind to me, so what is your value? What valuable things do you have? And as a point and aside right now, I just want to say to people that cruise, don't get so much into your cruising, into your monasterial life on a boat. You have to be able to get out and integrate yourself, make some compromises, meet different kinds of people. And I'm not just talking about, other boat people on the dock and things of this nature. Go to a movie, go to a play. Going to restaurants is great. Visit sites, talk to people. Don't. It's just not taxi cab drivers and stuff like that to talk to. You're not going to get the nation, the place you're going to be. You have to find people that live there, that work there, that have some sort of influence into how the place is either perceived or influenced. And the people that help you, like boat brokers, the port captains sometimes can be like that. If you're interested in art, I had some people along the way that were very interested in playing golf. So Marbella was a great place to play golf. And you could meet tons of people playing golf. So you meet a different kind of person, a different set of people. And this will make your cruising experience much, much better in that regard. So anyway, I go up and there's this big gate, and then I'm visiting the Prince of Marbella. I get out of the cab, I come in, I have the wand, goes over me, make sure I don't have any weapons on me. And I walk up the steps. It's absolutely beautiful with water fountains and stuff. It's a Spanish design home. It was magnificent. If you had all the money in the world and you lived in the south of Spain, this is probably what you would build. So I go in the door. I'm directed by a waiter butler, okay, wearing white gloves and a dark suit, and a cummerbund, to walk back through the house, through this giant portico, and then out some doors, some giant French doors. They're like 2 stories high. Out the glass doors in the back, and there was, maybe 40, 50 people back there. There was a barbecue going on, and there was a giant dish, and I mean giant dish, of paella. And when I say giant, I have to, this paella, the paella is, I think we all know what paella is. It's just sort of a rice and seafood, and there's lots of different things that can go into it. You can put some sausage in, and essentially what it is the Moorish kings at the time, going way back, they would create these rice dishes from leftovers from royal banquets and take them home. And paella originates from the Arab world of bakaya, which means leftovers. And paella also refers to the pan, which is cooked in. It means frying pan. So these giant pans, in this case, this pan was sitting on this number of propane burners. The pan was at least 8 foot in diameter. This is a huge pan. It was copper. It was beautiful. It had handles all the way around. I don't know how anybody actually moved this. You need 5 people to move this thing. And it was filled with rice and shrimp and langoust and sausages and all sorts of kind of stuff. The odor was just fantastic. And it is such a nice thing that this was going on. I mean, I stood there for a few minutes because, I didn't know anybody, and, it was okay, and this, that, and another thing. And we're very close to Valencia in Marbella. Valencia is the original town that that paella was created in. So it's not that far away from your basic sphere of influence. So anyway, it was kind of cool. And I was quite nice. And the waiter came by and he asked me if I wanted a drink. And I said, yeah, I'll take a glass of red wine and, this, that, and other thing. What kind of red wine? I mean, yeah, this is great. I went all the way through the whole process with him. He said, we have this great Burgundy. He was very articulate, very excited. It was like a sommelier talking to you. He was very excited, this, that, and other thing. And I suddenly felt like I wasn't really dressed for the place, to be honest. I was there and I still had my boat shoes on. I had on some jeans. I had on a nice shirt, and I had on a leather jacket, this jacket I had bought in Marbella. And it was, if you go to Spain, do yourself a favor, go shopping for leather, because they have some of the coolest leather goods that you could ever imagine. And Spain is really the place. And I mean, they've been exporting leather goods from Spain, since Christopher Columbus days. It's a good recommendation as far as shopping is concerned. So I'm standing there, and I see Alcazar come walking over to me. He's like, "Hey, how you doing?" And this, that, and another thing. And as soon as he said that, everybody, of course, in this place is watching him. Did you get a drink? Is your drink coming? What do you do? Come on, sit. We're going to eat. This, that, and another thing. He says, I want to eat early. He says, do you mind? I said, no, I don't mind. He says, yeah. He says, get so many people in here. He said, and I don't have time to eat with everybody here. So this is early, and that's why I wanted you to come and we could talk. I said, okay, great. Fantastic. I said, you got a beautiful place here. It's fantastic. So we got a big dish of paella, which was ridiculously good. And there was also some grilled leeks that he said, oh, you have to taste these. He said, if you haven't had leeks, like this, he said, this is where you do. And they grill them, and then they wrap them in newspaper, and they let them smolder, so to speak, and get real soft. And they were just absolutely delicious. And, and some wine and stuff. And we sat at a small table, very humble, small table. And he said, did you get your situation taken care of? I said, yes, I did. And thank you for speaking for me. I really appreciate that. He says, oh, no problem. He says, like I said, right and wrong sometimes is very hard to figure out. So Alcazar was very excited. So he was asking me questions about yachts and what kind of yacht I had. What kind of yacht could he do? Could I actually help him find a yacht for him? He says, I've owned them before. And I go, oh, okay. And actually he had owned not only yachts, but he had owned ships and a number of other things. So this was a little bit, I might say, kind of disingenuous in a way, but he was very interested in the different yachts. So we talked about Ferrettis. We talked about Fed ships. We talked about sailing. He didn't want to sail. He just wanted a motor yacht where he could entertain. And I said, well, yeah, there's mega yachts, and we could do it this way, and we could do it that way. And we spent 15, 20 minutes. And then he stood up real quick, and he says, look, I got to go, talk to all the rest of my guests, but I'll come down and see you tomorrow. Enjoy yourself tonight if I don't see you. Thank you very much. And he left. So I'm sitting there, and suddenly I am the center of attention. I have people wandering over to me, say, hi, how you doing? Introducing themselves. With rich people like that, if they pay attention to one person, everybody else wants that glow to be upon them. So we're sitting there, and this guy came over, started talking. This guy came over, started talking. And I really kind of found it very interesting to have been invited into this world. Everybody seemed to enjoy themselves. There wasn't any kind of pressure. There wasn't anything nefarious and stuff like that. I had a couple of people who say, hey, have you ever been up to Andorra? It's up in the mountains, and we come down here, and people were telling me about the houses they bought. And, people that are new to money love to talk about the things that they've just bought. Old money never talks about those sorts of things. They talk about life. They talk about things that center them. Talk about things that are their interest, not money. So you can always tell the difference between new money and old money. So the party was very nice. I stayed probably until like 1 o'clock. There was some dancing. I mean, it ended up there was close to, I would guess, maybe 400 to 500 people. I didn't see Alcazar for the rest of the evening. He just disappeared. Everybody seemed to enjoy themselves. There was a DJ. There was dancing. There were lots of beautiful women in expensive, very small, expensive Versace dresses. I had a few conversations, and then my spidey sense sort of went off. I said, yeah, I'm going to go back to the boat. So I left. And my spidey sense went off because I didn't feel like I didn't belong in this situation. I'm certainly know my value, but what I realized that a lot of the people that I was meeting there didn't have a certain kind of value that I had. And that's what Alcazar saw in me. He understood I was a yacht captain. He understood I had skills. He understood that I had a international sense of things, a political sense of things. He also learned that I was a writer. And in America, being a writer is not such a big deal. People kind of actually look down on you. They say, oh, what'd you do? Have I seen any of your work? I had a friend who was a novelist, and people who, have I seen your work? And he says, not unless you could read. And this was just like the punchline all the time. But in Europe, being a writer is held in very high esteem. Even if you don't or haven't written anything that people would know, just the act of being a writer is an important and lofty position. And when people sort of put two and two together, I had a very, very fine feeling that I had more value and more worth than a lot of the other people that were there who were just clamoring to get closer to Alcazar. And quite honestly, Alcazar's only I'd say positiveness was he loved his family. I met his wife again. She was lovely. And everybody was, that it was a family life. He made all the money for his family. That was his goal, making money for his family. He had a lot of faults, don't get me wrong. He's in prison right now in Illinois, and he's not allowed out until 2033. So he's there for a while. And he probably will never get out of prison. But in any case, that was sort of our experience. I got in the cab, I went home. I came back. The next morning I woke up. And when I woke up, I found the scooter at the back of the boat. And the broker for the boat was standing there with it. And asked if he could help me put it back up on the boat. And he told me that all the papers had arrived, everything had been clear, and that I was no longer a suspect in stolen goods and transferring of stolen goods, which actually didn't relieve me, but it relieved me. So we put the scooter up on the boat, and about 10:30, 11 o'clock, Alcazar comes walking down the dock. Hey, Scott, hey man, how you doing? Bounces on the boat. He's got a bunch of other gentlemen with him who I have no clue. I don't know what language I think they spoke Syrian and all the rest of this kind of stuff. And, they were just like people that were just like, who are these people? They're like puppets walking around behind him. And, I remember he was dressed in, he had loafers and very white pants with no socks. He had a white linen shirt and he had a blue and white sweater draped over his shoulders. He looked very dashing, big sunglasses, a whole shooting match. And he came on the boat, and I gave him a tour of the boat, and we talked to him, and he asked me how I enjoyed the party. I said I did. I enjoyed it very, very much. And we went up to the upper deck of the boat, and there was the scooter was sitting there, and he goes, "Oh, this is the scooter." Yes. Oh my God. He said, "I'll always remember this is the scooter that we met about." And he was kind of going through this whole process. He was very funny. And he said, "Thank you very much for the tour." He says, "I'll look into it. I'll have my people look into the boat. And if we could contact you, that would be great." I said, "Yeah, sure, whatever." He said, "Because if I buy a yacht," he says, "I'd want you to run it." I said, "Well, that's great. Thank you. I appreciate that." He said, "Yeah, we'll be back in touch." So as he was coming back to the aft deck, the other people, these other men, kind of dark force, as I call them, were sitting in the salon, smoking cigarettes in the boat, which is kind of not allowed. And my mate had actually served him drinks, and they were drinking vodka. And Alcacer, he sat down with them, lit up a cigar, and they're all talking, and they're sitting on the back of the boat. And I'm like thinking, oh, he's stinking the place up with these stuff like that. So I went to him. I said, "Look, we really don't smoke inside the boat because it damages it more because it's a more compressed area. And if you don't mind, sit on the aft deck." And he says, "Oh yeah, I did know. Thank you." And the other guys, when I said this, the other guys looked at me like, "What are you telling him that he can't smoke somewhere? Are you nuts? Don't you understand?" And then they all sort of went to the aft deck. They were there for like 2 minutes. They didn't have any more drinks. They left the bottle of vodka there, and they trundled off. And Alcazar said, "See you later. That was great. Thank you so much." And off he went. And I had never seen him before that. I had read about him because I knew him to a certain extent. And I was very impressed with him, to say the least. But this is sort of the nature of Marbella, where Marbella is this beautiful, absolutely gorgeous town with these sort of nefarious and con men and all, where the slush of humanity internationally sort of resides. But it's still a wonderful and wholesome place, for the beaches and for the mountains and the food. The food is always ridiculous. This is Andalus. Andalusian food is lots of seafood, lots of rice, a lot of chorizos, sausages and stuff like that. Really fantastic stuff. And I could do 20 podcasts on just the food there. It's very fascinating, very, very good food, very wholesome, very clean food. So Marbella, I left Marbella only to return one more time. I think I returned in 2000, something like 2002 maybe. I returned just to spend a couple of nights there. It was very early in the spring. There was nobody around. It was very, very quiet. No special people met, but it's kind of one of those interesting. It's kind of one of those interesting places, and I hope that this story gives you a little insight in sort of the craziness of traveling, especially by boat, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing, Scott. So what is next week's episode about?
Next week, I'm going to do our Christmas episode, and it's going to be Christmas in Virgin Gorda. Again, it is going to be about stories, and it's going to be about all that treasure you might find under a tree.
Thank you for tuning in. If you like this episode, be sure to leave us a review. You can find past episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can find us on Facebook and at offshoreexplorer.org. Our theme song is sung by Paulette McWilliams, with additional music by Amano Itomi and Tommy Twain.
Until next time, fair winds and calm seas.